title of this podcast is General Miscommunication. You no doubt have heard or read about all the different generations that we now have in our workforce. You know, there are the traditionalists and the baby boomers and Generation X, and there's Generation Y, commonly referred to as Generation WHY. Communicating with all these different generations presents really an entirely new communication set of problems. Let me give you some examples. I come from the traditionalist group, and this group that was born prior to 1946, and we're commonly known as the group that came over in the covered wagon. And when I speak of a record today, I'm thinking of my old 45 records by Fats Domino or Little Richard. When speaking of a record by most people, they're thinking of what crime did you commit? You know, that's the record. Do you have a record? Yeah. If you're talking to me, if I got a record, I'm saying, yeah, I got Fats and I got Little Richard. And if you're talking to somebody in the younger generation, no, I don't have a record. I haven't even been arrested. And I can tell you, being a fan of George Jones from traditional country music, he still comes on stage today, I mean, in this day and age, and says, you know, I want to do this song, which was one of my best-selling records. And, you know, as I look around, there's probably 3 other people that understand what he's talking about. But I also recall watching a rerun recently of an old Law and Order show where the star Jerry Orbach, Lenny as he was called on the show, was interviewing a young security guard who had fallen asleep on the job, and while he had fallen asleep, a person was killed in that building. And Lenny looked at him and says, looked at the young security guard and says, "Who do you think you are, Rip Van Winkle?" And the young man looked back at him and said, "Who?" And, you know, in my generation, we thought everybody knew who Rip Van Winkle was, and the guy that slept for 20 years. And that was just part of growing up, reading that story. In 2005, a story that comes right to the heart of the matter, I guess, I was conducting a training class on safety in my own company, and I was explaining the importance and the necessity of wearing the proper footwear while at work. And I told the group that wearing thongs was not permitted, to which my younger generation people just burst out laughing. Well, you see, in my day, what they call flip-flops now were called thongs. And today a thong is, it's something else. But think about it. Those of us who are of the older generation actually had to manage a company without a high-speed floor machine. We had to manage without a backpack vacuum for everyday use. We didn't have a cell phone. We didn't have any computers. We had instead typewriters and carbon paper. And some of you are probably asking, what's carbon paper? Well, you'll have a heck of a time finding it today. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have GPS units. We didn't have bidding and estimating software. We didn't have PDAs. We didn't have PowerPoint sales presentations in what we did. We didn't have computer spreadsheets to confuse us. Okay, you traditionalists, you can, listening to this, you can start naming other things you had to do without. And you of the younger generation are probably saying something like, no wonder things were so screwed up before I got here. And it reminds me of the old movie from 1977, Smokey and the Bandit. And Burt Reynolds was the star, and Sally Field was a girlfriend that was riding with him. And I remember they're getting acquainted, and she's saying, do you know Mozart, and do you know Beethoven, and do you know Phantom of, whatever. She's naming all these things, and he says, no, but you know Merle Haggard, and do you know George Jones, and do you know, he names off a bunch of them himself. And she says, no. And he says, well, before you go and criticize someone, you need to know what part of the country they came from. And so I say to you, in this generation of miscommunication, it's important for you as a leader, as a manager, to understand what generation are you dealing with as you're talking to your people that you're working with. You need to know what part of the country they came from.